And we're live, streaming from the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Thank you for joining our unique podcast community where we explore the issues and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. You can see our past 130 episodes at our website at www.jasontram.net. We also have an exciting roster of artists coming up in the next couple of months. You won't want to miss that. We go from opera stars to contemporary artists, pop music, you name it. We cross the genres and we look for these great stories of the artists, and we bring the artist behind the music out. So please remember also to use the chat feature to ask us questions and to join the conversation. We love it when the audience joins in. It makes our discussion so much more interesting. And we have a wonderful guest tonight. We have Bianca Jazmine, who is an indie rock singer-songwriter and a band leader, and she has an insightful message to advocate for peace, empathy, and unity, which we certainly need these days. She hopes to encourage everyone to embrace their individuality and use our unique personalities and ideas to help others and bring the world together. She uses her gifts in music to make this happen. She's a native of South Florida, and she's been on dozens of radio stations, and she has won the 2019 IndieCon Best Vocal Performance for her song The Key, as well as receiving the 2018 Oskey Award for Singer-Songwriter of the Year. And she's recorded all over the country, in Los Angeles and currently in Philadelphia, where she's working on projects. And we're so delightful that she can join us tonight. Welcome, Jazmine.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm honored.
Well, I really enjoyed getting to know your music, and I always look for singer-songwriters that moved me in some way. And your music had so much emotion. I really enjoyed discovering it.
Thank you. It's really important to me that is, part of the process. Is music is art, and I think the most important part of art is the emotion and the humanity behind it, and that's just for me a really important part of the process.
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to exploring that. Let's start with the beginning. Did you always know you wanted to be an artist, and was music a part of your life from a young age?
Absolutely. Music as a part of my life for sure. I was singing, playing instruments. I got my first professional lessons when I was 7 for guitar. So I started there, and then throughout the years, I started adding more and more instruments to my repertoire, including obviously vocals, and then all the other stuff around that I also play on the tracks, like ukulele and piano. Haven't played flute on one of the tracks yet, but I do play flute.
Oh, it's time to add that flute. That'll be a cool addition to have the flute in there as well. That's interesting.
That would be pretty fun. Originally, I didn't plan on making it an actual career. At first, I was like, oh, I really love this. This is what I do for myself. But then I realized as I got older, how I completely lost myself in music in the best way possible. And I found that the more I played it, the more fulfilled I was in the original career paths, the practical ones that you're taught to have and to favor stability and realism over, your dreams and, or the way our society works. I didn't really believe in that, that I was supposed to dream. And then once I realized how passionate I was about music, and I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, and I was, pouring my heart into these songs, and I figured, I'm young. This is the time. If I want to do it, I have to do it. And ever since I've thrown myself into it, I just know there's no other way. There's no other industry I want to be in. Music is absolutely where my heart and soul is, and however it may be, I'm here for life.
That's a great story. That's a great. We have a lot of younger listeners. Who are artists. That's a great story to tell, because if you have something to say, and you're dedicated and you devote your life to it, there's room in this industry for you.
Yeah, for sure. I think speaking your truth, giving the world your message, because everyone, yes, we all are same in a way, but we're also very different and we have unique perspectives. And I think when you can share your perspective through your music and combine that with a very cool auditory message, at the same time as a verbal message, I think the marriage of the two is so unique. And that's what I love about music. It's more than just, it's one of the only art forms that I can think of that just combines so many of them at once. You have visuals, you have obviously the music, excuse me. You have the verbal, the language behind the words, the meanings, and the design. It's so, everything's so interwoven. And as just a general artist, because I also love visual art and poetry and photography and all of that stuff too. And it's just so cool to be able to combine that. And because of how open, being an artist is, everybody's unique perspective, you can just pour yourself into it and everybody can come up with this completely different result. Like we all sing about love and, this and that, all these major themes that, most people sing about, but somehow we still have, these millions of songs that are all completely different. And I think that's so cool that you can just come in with your, perspective on human experience and completely be unique. And I think there's a lot of room for that. And that individuality is something that's becoming more and more welcome, I believe.
Well, it's so amazing. I'm a classical musician, and it's amazing how the interpretations, even pieces that of the same notes. Let's take a piano sonata. You take different artists from different periods of time, and it's going to sound different because everyone brings themselves and puts themselves into that music. So there's so much individuality, and each artist has something special to say that's uniquely their own.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the best part for me is like showing the world my perspective and then being able to appreciate other people's perspectives and connecting with people for that. I think is like one of the coolest parts of music is not just, sharing your own, but also being able to get very intimate and understand the process behind other people's perspectives, because what it's like, to share your art and to make it from scratch. And I mean, even when I started to get into actual like recording music and learning about production and things like that, it completely changed the way I listened to music, especially the stuff when I was younger, like before I really understood production. And then going back and hearing those same songs that were my favorite, I was like, whoa, I didn't even hear this before. It's like all these layers and panning and all this stuff that I just like didn't know about. It just like completely adds this color to music that I think as an artist, it's a blessing to be able to take in music that way. And I hope that other people can see that in either their own music or other people's music, just how colorful it can be, when you understand the perspectives.
It's fantastic. Were your parents musically inclined?
Ironically, not really. I mean, I think they can hold a note, but like no one was really an instrumentalist or, anything super musical. Like they're artistic and like my dad is really good at drawing and things like that. But no one really had this huge musical inclination. But it's funny because I have two other sisters and all three of us are musicians. So it's like, I don't know if it like skipped a generation or something, but I mean, all three of us are musicians. We play guitar, my younger sister, she plays the French horn and all these other, a lot of orchestral instruments as well on her end. So it's very good variety.
She picked one of the hardest instruments. That French horn is a real doozy to get the sound.
She's real good too. She's got a
you have to be. You have to great ear too.
Yeah, she's great. So all three of us are musicians, but I don't know where it came from. I'm sure it's in our blood, maybe it's because we're Cuban, we're artistic, but it's something that I think all three of us, just being artsy in general, like my sisters are also amazing artists, like visually. Like I obviously took the route of music, but my younger sister, she's an amazing visual artist. Like she just wants to do animation and things like that too. And my older sister as well, an amazing artist. So art is definitely a really important value here, creativity in general in my family. So I think just that general environment bred that, that road to music, because it was always encouraged. I know not everyone has that, openness to creativity in their household. So I was very blessed. My parents always encouraged us to be creative and to be artistic. And obviously I'm very thankful if you guys are watching. Love you.
So what was your first performance and what did you sing?
My first, well, I did a lot of musical theater when I was a kid, but my first like vocal performance solo as a singer was this high school talent show. And like, because before that I was like terrified of singing by myself. I had huge stage fright, although I loved theater and I loved it. I was always like one of like the choir kids, like singing and dancing in a big group. Like that was like more my style. And then when I started to get comfortable in my own shoes on stage, I was like, wow, like I have so much like creative control up here. Like I can really do and say whatever I want. Like it's something I was never really used to because I, was just given a script and I would follow it and it would be amazing and fun. And I loved that too. But definitely being an artist and having your own voice is a whole other different chapter that started in my life. And thankfully my best friend, Aishani, hey girl, she, helped me, push me to perform on that stage. Because I remember going to the talent show the year before, and she was like, "Why aren't you up there? Like you should be up there." And I was like, okay, why not? Like,
Shout out to those people that believe in us before
right?
we
Yeah, I would have
and
never
find our
done
voice.
that.
To find your voice is so special, and I think it's great that you sang in choir. As a former high school choir director, now a college choir director, it's incredible because it teaches you so many fundamentals being in those groups, and then you have to bring yourself as it's very brave to get up there and sing as an independent, just with you and a guitar or you as a soloist. It takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, it was definitely very nerve-wracking the first few, and even after that, when I started then writing my own music and then performing that, I mean, then just my general stage presence after that kind of became more of my focus, and I went from being like very like nervous and stiff to like now, like, I mean, obviously before COVID, but I was crowd surfing, and like one of my last shows was like, it's like just like
Wow.
watching the development from being like so like, oh, like I'm by myself, like people are gonna hear me, and then just being like, all right guys, I'm diving in, like
Got to put on a show, right? You're a performer. It's a part of the gig.
yeah, it's always fun looking back at that development, because sometimes I forget that ever happened, that I was this nervous girl singing an Amy Winehouse cover in high school, like, well, sometimes I go out, and I was like up there, but then going to that, it's always fun, and hopefully continuing that progress. I don't even want to be anywhere near done with my development.
I tell all my students that music is a marathon, not a sprint, and you can learn. You'll be learning your entire life. I'm 46, and I'm learning more. The more I learn, and the more I realize I have to learn. It's such a great field because it never stops.
Yeah, there's no cap. There's no limit to what you can be. You can just continue to learn and learn. And
the peak
and
never arrives. It keeps on going.
Yes. There's no like definitive route or path either. It's like you take what you want from music. You want to go more the traditional route, the contemporary, or the creative route. There's so many different facets and ways you can express yourself, or simply learn and reinterpret what's been written. And all of it is amazing. There's no one that's better or worse than the other. It's just all of it is an amazing way to live and has an opportunity to grow at a lifelong level.
Now, how old were you when you wrote your first song, and what was that process like?
Ooh, so I used to have a poetry book like in elementary school, like it was old, like High School Musical, like like I was such a fangirl for High School Musical.
Of course.
And I wrote all of these like dumb poems in there. Like I literally wrote a poem about like having a headache. Like I wrote about everything. Like like I've had migraines since I was a kid, so it was probably like my first like like real struggle as a child. It was just like the amount of pain I had to deal with all the time. So like I would really write stuff about having headaches. That's like the first thing I could think of. All the ways to just like these dumb songs where I try to like mimic like Fergie or like whatever was like the pop sensation at the time about them being like a Hollywood star, like, and then just everything. And then I started getting into more of like social topics where I, even in middle school I would look around and be like, oh, that's kind of weird that happens, like like why are certain people be treating this way and certain people treated that way. And I started questioning the way things were working around me, and that started to also influence my writing in my music as well. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's so important. You always have to start with where you are. You have to start with what the emotions you feel. That's great. And then to put that down, what does it feel like to put that on paper and come up with a new piece that kind of speaks to those emotions?
It definitely feels like I can like release them in a productive way. So whether they're good or bad, people write, songs from any mood, but it just feels like I have this like jumble of things in my head going all the time. Like I'm one of those people that just always has like thoughts going. And so to just be able to take them and like organize them on a paper and like, in a way that's pleasing to the ear and feels like artistically sound, it's extremely satisfying. And it feels like I can like close the book on that. You know what I mean? Like it's like kind of my way of like finding closure with no matter how big or small the emotion is. It's something that if I'm dealing with it, or if I'm or it's just something I'm observing from someone else's life too. I've written from that perspective as well. It just feels like it's like a thought that I can just like not have to come back to. Not that I'm not coming back to it, but like I've like made my peace with it. You know what I mean?
Of course. Now, how has your songwriting deepened as you've gotten older and you experience more? How does that change your songwriting?
Yeah, so I feel like in like more of a on more of a concrete way, like the actual melody building and stuff, I've learned to become a lot looser and a lot more experimental. Where when I first started, I was a little bit afraid of like kind of veering outside of the box. I was still trying to figure myself out. Like, okay, do I just do like first chorus, bridge, chorus? Like, you know what I mean? Just like sticking like.
Got to start with the formulas that work, right?
There's nothing wrong with that either. Just like the foundation that I picked up from what other people were doing around me. And but you know, to a certain point, like where I started to feel like a little bit limited by it, and I would start to ask, okay, what can I do differently? Maybe I can just have an ending that doesn't go back to the chorus. You know, it's as simple as that. Plenty of people do that as well. And just finding different ways to communicate in a songwriting structure has been really fun. I've been a lot more experimental in my newer writing with that, and even my melody. You know, I always like kind of stuck to these like more ballady like melody writing, and now I've kind of like veered into this more like indie style, a little more experimental. Just like letting loose, I think, was like the biggest part of my journey that I've learned, is not being afraid of myself and not being afraid of what I'm capable of. And that was always something I struggled with, even growing up. You know, I always felt like I was always like very like hard on myself, and that was just something that was ingrained in me. You know, like my family was always very supportive. They were always, you know, very proud of me and everything I did. But it was just always something intrinsically inside of me that always felt like not good enough. And I think dealing with that and realizing that I am worthy and I am able to, you know, make good music. And I know it's something a lot of artists deal with. And it's frustrating to see, like,
I've heard that from a lot of artists, like, you know, finding your voice and feeling comfortable in your skin is a challenge and a process.
Especially when you're broadcasting it to people. And, you know, it's a whole different, like, when you're just like, you know, if you're in a different industry where like you don't have to broadcast yourself to a group of people, I feel like maybe that journey is a little more introverted, a little more introspective. And as an artist, you have to deal with the intro, obviously the introverted part too, but also the effect of that. Like, how will people receive this? Are they going to like it? Is it okay if I'm myself? What if the way I've been portraying myself is not myself? Like, do I even know who I am? You start going through all those questions in your head, just like, you know, going down.
Music is so much cheaper than therapy. That's the joke that we always say, right? It's
Although I would not necessarily say that I don't recommend therapy. I think
the two work together. Certainly,
especially the way times have been. You know, these things have been really tough on artists, and I definitely would recommend probably seeking professional help if that's something that you feel like you should get. But I will say that music has been an incredibly effective coping mechanism for, you know, any anxiety or overthinking that I deal with. Writing just always has a way of like just getting them out. And, you know, that's something I wish I was just like constantly having thoughts going and being very like, you know, anxious and uptight. And I feel like recently, especially in the past year, like even though COVID really hit us super hard, and especially just the entire music community just stopped, which things seem to be picking up for a lot of people right before. You know, I know a lot of people that had that feeling of like, right, I just felt like right when I was picking everything up, it just got, you know, stomped right on top of, and then starting from there. But it's like, I feel like that moment of silence, like also helped everyone kind of regenerate and kind of quiet the noise for a second and think, okay, let's pause. Who am I? What is my message? What do I want to say? And I feel like that moment to just be and observe yourself allows you to recreate yourself and come back 10 times stronger in the writing process. And that's, at least personally for me, I know everybody had a very different, you know, COVID experience as an artist, but I know there's a lot of people in my boat where, you know, it's like, it was time to rebrand. It was time to restart, you know, kind of like let the old out and let the new in, and building from the bottom up again, essentially.
Well, it's going to be a very different world after this chapter ends for all of us in every way, in every industry, but particularly the music industry. I mean, we're seeing a vast reshaping of Broadway. I'm from New York City. Broadway, the Metropolitan Opera, classical music, and of course, popular music is going to be the same. I believe that we're all going to see a different world. And I think all of us have become philosophers as artists these days.
Yes, a lot of questions and our own perspectives on those answers being shared. And I think it's an amazing thing too. Like we talked about earlier about perspective, and I think it's what music and art is all about, is just simply perspective. You can find meaning in literally anything if you try hard enough. So it's like, if you can take whatever is coming at you and then find meaning and then cycle it back out into the world, and then someone else takes that and finds meaning in it, you inspire them. It's just like a big chain reaction of like inspiration, perspective, inspiration, perspective on that inspiration. And it's like a big domino effect. And I think that's just how we can keep that cycle going, the way we can all just continue to inspire each other to continue to create, continue to figure out who you are, and allow that to shine in your music. Even if you don't know who you are yet, like being open about that in your own music is something that is really, like, I feel like I've done in my own music too. So it's definitely something that I love to see other people engage in as well.
So with your, so let's talk about your journey into recording. What was that like the first time? When was the first time you were in the studio, and how has your experience deepened during the years?
Yeah, I've had a lot of very different experiences as far as recording goes. My first experiences were more so recording covers and demos, like when I was first starting out, not necessarily like recording my original music yet. I just wanted to kind of like have something to work with. And then I started really dedicating myself to recording my originals. And I've worked from everywhere from, in the beginning, I felt like I wasn't as confident in my own vision and who I thought I was. So I felt like, a lot of the other stuff was dictated for me. Like I didn't make a lot of the decisions that I wanted to make. And I felt like I didn't know how to use my voice yet. And that's kind of that journey I was talking about. Like, you get comfortable in your own skin, you learn to stand up for yourself and to, be like, hey, this is my creative vision and I know what I want. And then once you know what you want, you know who you are, it's like no one can tell you no at that point, because you're so confident in what you want for yourself that no one can take that away from you when you're sure of who you are. And I think like that was one of the biggest lessons I learned, is like knowing what I want and being okay with asking for that. I was always the kind of person who just kind of let other people like, okay, like, I was a little more of like the, a non-confrontational type, and not that I'm, rude or anything, but I certainly know how to put my foot down and set boundaries a lot better now in my life. And especially in the music world, it's, people will step on your toes if you let them. So you have to learn how to be strong and to be assertive. And especially like as a person who's always like, a little more of like the empathetic, quiet type. I had a hard time with that in the beginning, and allowing myself to be like, hey, actually, I think I want this, because I didn't even know what I wanted. So now I'm at a point where, I feel like a lot more confident, and that I know how to work in more productively in groups to where we can collaborate in a healthy way, rather than just feeling like I'm kind of being like ignored, or, you know what I mean?
I love to talk about this with artists because I love the different processes that everyone's so unique in their journeys. When you write a piece of music and you bring it to the studio, have you performed it a lot first, or do you record it first and then perform it?
Well, I'll record it on my own end, like a really rough version, and then kind of bring that with me and be like, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking, like, and then this is what I envision to add on top of that. And then, of course, I'm always open to suggestions, especially when you're collaborating with producers and engineers and things like that. They can come up with a lot of really cool compositional things that I would have never thought of. And that's how you get these amazing songs, is I think, like, when you work in groups, too. That's one of the things I miss a lot, is that collaboration. And, I always loved that. And, the last time I was in, like, a really awesome environment with that was in Philadelphia, where I recorded my most recent singles they should be releasing this year. With Mitch Beer and, everyone over there in Philly has been super awesome. A very welcoming studio space with awesome collaboration over at Retro City Studios in Philadelphia. So I highly recommend them. They're a super awesome team to hang out with.
Shout out to Retro City Studios. I love it.
Yep. It's a really, really fun environment there that I think just allowed like for creativity in a very healthy and open way. And sometimes it's hard to find that. And, sometimes you realize that like not everyone is there for you, and that was also another thing I had to learn about too, is like knowing, how to set those boundaries and things like that, and protecting yourself, but also being open to work with other people, because, the music industry can kind of sometimes be a sketchy place. I try not to be cynical. I try to assume the best in people. But you can't be foolish or naive either. You have to have, there's a certain line.
So tell us about the process. People who may not know the process of working with a producer. So when you found a producer you enjoy working with, what's that process like? And how does that change the product you hear when we go on Spotify and hear one of these songs?
Yeah, so kind of like what I was explaining before with coming in with like a song that I've already written. So maybe it's just me on the piano or like the ukulele or something. Then I'm just like singing like the bass of the song. And I'm like, okay, I kind of imagine this movement here, this, compositional thing happening there. And then, it's like that back and forth, like slowly the song, like when it comes to like picking out the synth sound you want, or the guitar tone, or what kind of snare hit you want. It's like really small, snowball effects happen. And then slowly the song morphs and then it's, oh, I was kind of expecting this sound, but then I actually kind of fell in love with this other sound over here. So it's like one small decision at a time, it morphs into something completely different from what you expected. And then a lot of the times in a very good way, where you're like, wow, I would have never expected this, but it's super awesome.
Yeah, it's like combined, when you take two bright minds, put them together, sometimes the effect is greater than the two individual parts. We have that alchemy where it's greater than the parts that put it together.
Yeah, definitely. I think collaboration is an amazing tool for artists. And especially because art, like we said, was about perspective. And when you have those other perspectives with you in the same room and you bounce them off each other, and then they turn into other perspectives that morph and grow in their own ways. And so it's just this big, it's like a flower blooming, in the studio where you're just like, whoa, like we didn't expect this, but it looked really cool beforehand. Now it's even cooler now.
So in this time where there's so many negative emotions and social media can be so incredibly negative, especially on the news and when you're on Twitter, and social media can be such a negative influence, you advocate for positivity, for healing, for social causes. How do you find your inspiration?
For me, I feel like when I look, I'm like I said before, I'm a very empathetic person, and when I see the experiences of the people I love around me, the people I care about, from all different backgrounds, I surround myself with many different people from different walks of life, which I'm very, very blessed to have. And I see what other people go through and how their experiences differ from, others, and it's always kind of inspired me to be able to connect with people and see what they're going through, and then just kind of reflecting my perspective back onto that. Definitely.
Has your songwriting, how do those themes manifest in your songwriting?
I just really care. I'm a very, very caring person, and when I see people who are suffering or who are going through something, and even if it's within my own self that I'm feeling, I feel like music is a tool for healing. And so it's not just talking about healing itself, but the act of music, the act of writing, the act of singing a song is healing in its own right. And so I feel like when you incorporate those themes on top of it, you've just got like a big old healing sandwich, and it's quite tasty.
Very, very well put. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. You have such a great outlook on life, and you're incredibly philosophical for someone your age, which is really cool. So tell me about how COVID, has affected you personally, and how is that going to manifest itself in the art when you return to the stage?
I feel like COVID really forced me to look beyond just my live show and to really start to think about the things that go beyond that, at least on a very administrative, concrete perspective. It was actually very useful in making me realize I can't just depend on performing live as an artist, right? Especially when live shows are happening one after the next, and they're fun and they're very important, but it kind of made me realize, okay, maybe I need to get some photos done. Maybe I need to start thinking about doing that. And, kind of brushing up in the corners that kind of pushed aside, because focusing on the live shows and planning the tour and getting the gear and practicing the set and getting the light show done and all these things that go towards a live show, which is still very important. I felt like maybe as a result, some other things like recording and writing and such kind of got tossed to the side. So I feel like on that perspective, recording, writing, a lot of those things became my priority again, where I feel like they weren't as much before. So it's allowed me to create a lot of content over the past year that I'm very ready and excited to release in this upcoming year.
So you have releases coming up imminently. When do you think those might come out?
Yes, we're working on some masters right now, so probably within the next few months. Hopefully by summer, we can probably expect to see some of the first releases roll out. Trying to space it out and get a lot of content for each one. Like I said before, that wasn't something I was focusing on as much. So I think creating more content, being creative in a digital way, is a new realm for me that because of COVID, we've all been forced to adapt and become very online. Whether it's live stream performances or music videos or recording covers and just kind of sharing them with people, and being more engaged with people online. I've never really been super good at that growing up. I wasn't a big social media person. You never really found me. I'd post once a year. I was one of those people that were just kind of not really online. And, so that was a big challenge for me, learning how to be active on social media. It's always been something that I wasn't really comfortable with. And I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it, thankfully, but there are still challenges. I feel like, whenever I hit post, I'm like, is this is this worth it? But you know what I mean? Do people care about this? Who cares if I'm,
Well, we were talking about this in the before the show, how today's indie artists are so different. I mean, back in the old days, the record companies would create these plastic images of artists and they put it out there, and that would be what they sell. But today's indie audience wants to know who the artists are. They want to know the backstory. They want to know what the songs are about, and they're linked directly to people like yourself's social media feeds.
Yes, definitely. So I feel like authenticity and putting your actual face forward rather than, this mask that we all put on, no pun intended, when we're online, it's definitely something that people are rejecting a lot more. And I actually really love that, because I felt like that's what kind of pushed me away from social media, like long ago, when I was, when it was more popular, 2010s. Things were a lot more like the biggest filters you can put on, and put as much editing as you can, and that's what like people like, that's what everyone favored. And now I love that just the movement of like au naturel is like kind of like becoming a thing, and that authenticity and just being who you are and being vulnerable on the internet. Super weird territory, but we're doing it, and we're achieving it. And I think that's like super cool to society. I think it will really increase empathy between people and really help with a lot of these issues that I talk about in my songs as well, is just seeing other people for who they are and not for these plastic images that maybe we put onto ourselves, maybe other people put onto us, it depends on the person. But I feel like that online presence, it's definitely shifting in what's considered best case scenario, I guess, to labels and in a more, higher up music industry way.
Social media can certainly be a loaded gun, right? A loaded weapon. You can choose to use it for good, or you can choose to use it for incredible harm. And for so many people, it's been very difficult for young people to navigate that road, creating unrealistic body image perspectives and unrealistic lifestyle expectations. But I think that's a healthy use of it. I don't know if you saw the Netflix The Social Network. It was one of those things really eye opening, and
I did watch that.
You have to be careful with that. It's and it's people like yourself. You put a very positive message out there, and it's so important today.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It is really important, and I don't know if anyone else has seen The Social Network, but it really does show that like these things are crafted for us to want to be on the app more. So it's like, as consumers, if we're more concerned about comparing ourselves to others, or wanting to achieve this huge lavish lifestyle that like maybe is not super like authentic, it's going to keep giving us that. And I think if we have the power to choose what we want to see and tell the algorithm what we like, I feel like we can start to kind of gain back some of that control, because I feel like everyone has this like viewers like, I don't have control over that. Like we all just, we all gave it to Facebook. They know everything about us. We just kind of all wave our white flags, and we're just like, whatever at this point. But, I think we have way more control than we think we do. Without us, there is no app, So if we as consumers create that culture ourselves and show, hey, this is what we do want. And I think that is happening, and at a slow and steady pace. People are saying, we don't want this anymore. We don't want this negativity in our life. We want to see this positivity. And then you start to see that ball rolling, and more people are saying, okay, maybe we should just love each other, love ourselves first. I feel like these industries just absolutely prey on self-hatred, and low self-esteem is the target. The worse we can feel about ourselves, the more money they can get out of us, right?
The more people fight with each other, the more salacious it becomes. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, especially on the profit end, it's like they're there for the money. So as long as they can make us, feel like crap about ourselves, they can control us. And so when you say, hey, actually, I don't, I'm not with that. I know who I am. I love myself for who I am. I don't need your products to know that about myself. Then they start to lose that. And I think they'll start to scram and find something else, to be putting in our face. And I think at that point, maybe we can solicit, maybe more positive content and things that are actually helping people.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, that's very powerful. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Of course. Yeah.
So what's next? How do you think the industry might change? What do you think may be positive out of this period we've just gone through?
I think the biggest thing we did mention before is like that rebranding, that authenticity, like putting your best foot forward, but your most real foot forward at the same time, I think is going to be huge. And I love seeing that this whole like, work from home, living from home, people are showing like themselves in their jammies and, no makeup selfies, these are the kind of things that are like becoming popularized. And I think that will continue to have that ball rolling, when all these live shows come back, hopefully even in a live setting, like we can just be more real with each other. And hopefully it'll foster more connection between people, especially because we've had, only on an online sense, we've been very connected, more connected than ever, but it definitely doesn't replace anything like real human connection. And I hope when we come back, people will realize how sacred that is. And I think maybe we'll be a little more grateful for the connections and the people that we do love and have in our lives, and be more open to listening to others and fostering to those new connections with new people and who might have different perspectives or views on life. And being okay with that, and still being able to respect them for who they are and treat them like a human.
We have our first question from the audience, and this is from Steve from Palm Beach, and he asks, who were some of your influences, musically speaking, growing up?
Growing up, I was a huge Beatles fan when I was younger. I used to have their entire discography on my laptop, and I would just shuffle the entire thing, and that would just be all I listened to. And then going further into like contemporary music, the newer stuff, when 21 Pilots started to become like big with their Vessel album, before like the whole Blurry Face, it was a little bit before they broke into mainstream. I discovered them, and it was really cool watching their growth. And they just came out with a single too, so I'm very excited. And it's been cool as a fan to watch them go from this relatively indie band, more like regional, and then explode to this huge international band. So it's always nice to be able to follow people's journeys like that. I have so many different artists that I listen to. It's like this question always, like, I feel like I'm gonna miss someone. Like I feel bad. I'm like, I'm sorry for all the artists that I love that I'm not mentioning right now. It's like, I don't know. I'd have to sit here for an hour.
That's awesome. Well, we're surrounded by greatness. There's so much out there, and we draw, kind of pick and choose, and it all kind of cross-pollinates.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you take a little bit from here and here, and sometimes you don't even understand that you're taking that influence. So I'm sure there's sounds that I've listened to and artists I listened to that inspired me that I didn't even know it. Like it just appeared in my writing, and that's kind of the cool thing about inspiration is it's so subconscious, and it can be. You can consciously be like, oh, I want to write a song like that. But for me, I've never really been that kind of person. I've never like directly tried to emulate someone's sound. But we're influenced by everything we take in. So I'm sure there's been plenty of sounds that I've heard and loved that I've incorporated into my own music subconsciously. Like different guitar tones or synth sounds that when I hear them, like, whoa, I love the way that just like tickled my brain in the perfect spot. How do I make that happen for myself? And just finding ways to do that on your own.
Here's a different question. If you could sit down with any two artists, who would they be? Whoa. Living or deceased?
That's a tough one. Jeez. I've gotten this question before, and I think like somehow I weaseled my way out of it, and I don't want to do that again. Like I want to give you a solid answer. No. Well, the cool thing about 21 Pilots' Tyler Joseph is that he writes everything, he produces everything, and I just find his songwriting and his lyrical content is so vulnerable. And I feel like I would definitely sit down with him. I know it's a more contemporary choice, and I literally just talked about 21 Pilots, so sue me, but I love his outlook on writing, and I love how he's transformed as an artist. He's always been very unconventional about his structure, and his layering and his production is just amazing. I love all the vocal layers and all the crazy ways he uses electronic sounds like synth and things like that to just layer his music and create such an ambiance. He really knows how to craft a mood beyond just a sound or a melody.
Sonic tapestry. I love that image.
It's like texture. It's like I feel like when I became a 21 Pilots fan, like I discovered texture in music and the way you can have a sound that simply exists to like vibrate a certain frequency and just like create that mood. Like whether it's something really tense on the low end or high end, like sounds that aren't like just like a guitar solo. It's like really specific and weird, and I always thought it was super unique, and I'd love to sit down and talk to him about that. Like I could definitely do that.
Any deceased artists either come to mind?
I was a big John Lennon fan when I was growing up. I would love to know because a lot of his music tackles a lot of the issues he was very ahead of his time. And I feel like just any of the Beatles, like all of them are really, really good. George Harrison was an incredible writer. And I'd love to have a conversation with any of them any day. Yeah.
Well, I know Ringo Starr is still out there, about and about, and still touring pre-COVID, and it's amazing. I met the head of his road crew. I was backstage. I was booking an orchestra for a concert, and he was doing the same concert. And when he's not doing, whenever he's not doing this one, he was doing. And I'm like, what's he like backstage? Oh, he's great. He's a terrific person. He loves to tell stories. I'm like, wow.
That's so cool.
He doesn't have to do anything. I mean, one of the Beatles.
Yeah, I'm sure He's all set. That's awesome.
But I love to hear those stories of artists giving back. I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think using your platform for good, and not just in a way where it's like you owe the world something. Obviously you create for yourself first, and that's kind of like the whole purpose that you have to love it and you have to be connected to it. But when you can link that to a cause or some kind of purpose beyond yourself, I think like that is a true hallmark of success in my book. When an artist can make a big change in a societal level, even if it's just one person's life, like the fact that you can change someone or help someone through music. And that kind of circles back to the whole healing thing, whether it's in an emotional way where like you help someone through a hard time with their music. Like that's one of the biggest compliments I've ever got, was like someone telling me that like I have helped them emotionally just with my music. And that, like, to me, that's it. That's like, if I can do that, I have succeeded. And I hope that I can keep doing that for people. And I know artists have done that for me. So I know from a firsthand perspective how incredibly important music is. It makes a difference, on a personal level. And then as obviously, on a societal level, like charity concerts and things like that, I've done a bunch of those. And that's also really important for me, is giving back, even if it's in a monetary way through, shows and things like that.
It's that butterfly effect that it can make such an impact. We may not feel it right away, but it happens.
Yes.
Powerful.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Wow. So what are some of the causes that you're really passionate about right now?
Well, I have done a few charity shows for Inner Truth Project. They're a nonprofit organization based out of Port St. Lucie, Florida, and they're a big women's rights organization. They help survivors of sexual assault, domestic abuse, and things like that. And not just women, but also, all people who are affected by this. And it's always been really important to me to help, populations that are in need and need those resources that might not be as readily available as others. And that's been a huge one that I've worked with Inner Truth Out. They're an amazing organization. Check them out if you have the time, or donate. I know Mindy.
Shout out. Such an important topic, such an important cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they create such an amazing safe space and openness, and they provide resources to people who need them. And Mindy does a lot of amazing work over there at Inner Truth Project. It's been an honor to work with her, for sure.
Well, shout out to those people who dedicate themselves to making life better for people. And artists are a natural for that, because we heal with our sounds.
Yes, definitely. On every level, healing, whether it's, like I said, helping out in an organization, directly, or just feeling it with the music and allowing that to heal you, so that you have the availability and personal power to heal others, as something I'm a huge believer in as well.
So you mentioned that that to see that your music affects people, it really is special to you. Now, some of your videos, I looked on today on your YouTube channel, and you have 67,000 views on one video, and your music gets heard on Spotify and all the streaming platforms, and you have a growing presence on social media. What's it like to watch your music have an increasing effect on the world around you?
It's definitely very weird, because it's like I spent so many years just like writing in my room alone. It's like always like just I literally ate lunch in the auditorium sometimes in high school, just to sit
I
alone.
did the same thing.
I just like
us musical types never change.
Yeah, so it's definitely like a different world for me now, where I've learned to kind of be more open and be okay with being public about things, and that's the vulnerability side of things. We see other people do it, and we're so quick to judge them, about the way they say it or what they're saying. And it's like to be vulnerable about anything on a public standpoint, at least for me, and I think a lot of artists relate to me on this one, is just kind of nerve-wracking. And like, you don't know, like, is it okay to talk about these things? Like, how are people going to receive it well? And then when you kind of like push away the fear and the anxiety about all of it, and you just kind of come in with your authentic self, I feel like you can't go wrong from there. When people see that you are being real, and even if what you're saying is, kind of weird, it's like people will always be on your side about it. And you'll always have someone there advocating for you when you are being your most authentic self.
Well put. So do you have any memories of specific people who have contacted you, or with specific references in your songs that have moved them?
For me, it was the song, actually that song, You'll Find Love. Someone told me that it like gave them a lot of hope, that when I explained the meaning of the song to them, that it was more than just you'll find love in a romantic way. It's one of those songs that you can interpret in your own light, whether it's
back
love,
to perspective again. That's
perspective. It's everything in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I could talk about it for hours. It's something that's huge for me. But yeah, just the word love, it means so many different things. And in our popular culture, the first one that people think about is romantic love. So I kind of leave the song open to interpretation for that. But for me, when I wrote that song, it was about self-love, and it was about loving myself and being okay in my own skin, regardless of any, baggage it carries. It's like I love myself, and I can find love within myself anywhere I go. And that's kind of the main line of the song is you'll find love no matter where you go if you have that love inside of yourself first. And I think being there for yourself first is so important so that you can then, give back to the world. Because if you're, if you're only halfway with yourself, you can only give that halfway. You know what I mean? It's like, but if you're there for your whole self, your entire self, you can give that out and you'll have room and, that extra love in your life to share with others. It's hard to do that when you don't have it for yourself. And I think that's very important first and foremost is learning how to love yourself. And that's a journey I've been on, and I'm still taking, it's not something that, no one's perfect. I'm sure no matter how old you are, where you come from, it's something that people just deal with, especially as artists, as being, confident in themselves and their own work and having that self-worth. But I feel like in that song,
it's that marathon, that musical marathon,
yes,
it never ends. It's always happening. We're always striving for different plateaus.
Yeah. So once I explained that message to the song at a live show, someone came up to me there, like, that really resonated with me. Like, that means a lot to me in my life right now. And, I'm going to be doing some thinking about this. And I thought that was super amazing that, like, I could impact someone just, singing my song at a live show, that, that those words would hit them and they'd be like, whoa. And it's kind of funny because it's kind of like a upswingy pop song. It's definitely the most pop thing I've ever created. But it's like, people will still find the meaning in there, and they'll still, like I said, like, we will find meaning in literally anything, and most of the time it will reflect what's going on in our own lives. The majority of the time, everything we see is simply a reflection of ourselves. And that shows in the way we interpret things.
Music has always been like the amber that captures everything around it. I teach my undergraduates that it's like grabbing, it crystallizes the history, what the composer was doing that time, who they were talking to. And a song does that. It crystallizes everything that's going on around it, the sounds we hear, the thoughts, what's going on in the news. Everything's kind of crystalled around that. Do you feel like that when you listen to the pieces you've recorded in the past?
Yes, it's kind of like a little bit of a time machine. Like, it definitely freezes what you were going through, how you were feeling in that moment. And it's kind of cool because on top of it, yourself being like, oh my God, was I really like going through that? Like, you can sometimes it like creates a little bit of embarrassment and you're like, oh my gosh, I was like so immature. But then, you look back and like, it's also really cool because like I've grown so much, and it not only does it give you a sense of like nostalgia, where like, yes, we have that crystallized moment, forever packed in a song, but also like, shoot, I've grown a lot, and I've come from, a long journey, and I'm able to see that in my writing. And it's so cool because it makes me wish that everyone was like a musician or a writer so that they could see that within themselves. I'm sure people have their own ways of having that, but for me, it's like writing and seeing the way that's grown and morphed over time has simply been a reflection of the growth and morphing I've done myself, like a butterfly. It's like you just see all those phases until, you see yourself bloom. And it's really cool to be able to look back on that and see your own growth.
Well, it certainly has been great to talk to you and to hear about your music and your deep thinking. And I wish you nothing but success as you go about your journey and we see the next chapter of what you're going to do.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here and chat with you about all these things.
How can we find out more about you, and where can people go to check out your music and see what you're up to?
Yeah, so I have my own website, biancajazmine.com. That's Jazmine. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for that. And that one has all my links to everything, but you can also find me at Bianca Jazmine Music on Instagram is where I'm the most active, through my stories, or just DMs and things like that. Feel free to reach out to me on there. I'd love to chat more about anything you have questions about. But yeah, my website is where you can find all of my links, Spotify, things like that. Check us out, where we have some music coming up this year. So following on Spotify and streaming things on there is always helpful for any artist that you know of. Definitely interacting with their Spotify helps a lot.
We'll be on the lookout for this great rising artist, and we look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon. We have a great show coming up tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with soprano Eugene Fortezza. So thank you so much, and remember, keep music alive.